message to the billionaire class: you can't have it all.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Evolution of Now. I am your main host for today, Michael, and with me I have my beautiful co-hosts, my lovely assistants. We have Chris. Hello Chris.
Oh, hello there.
And we have Jordan.
Oh,
how you doing,
hello
John?
there. I'm pretty good. How's everything?
That was pretty good.
Thank you.
How are you folks doing over there in the New Jersey?
In USA land, you know.
Yes. The land of...
Don't say it.
You don't even have to at this point.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah. I mean, we're hanging in there. I mean, I guess it's thankful that our state is not like batshit crazy like some states in this union are. But we are pretty much one of the most corrupt states, at least. So we have that going for us.
Yeah, for decades.
Yay! We're so amazing.
But yeah,
here.
apparently.
Go on, Jordan.
Oh, sorry. Well, we can only hope things will get better. We have a governor that's currently our new governor is being touted as the most progressive governor in America. So I don't know how valid that is. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
We shall. Mr. Phil Murphy. He what bank did he used to work for? Was it like a...
Here we go.
See, I mean,
it's not going to be that progressive. He's worked for a bank, is he?
It depends. Like we will see what happens. He is talking the talk, and we have to wait to see if he walks the walk.
Yeah, let him see it. Let him prove himself, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, serving as a Goldman Sachs banker is a good way to get your foot in the door in politics. Yeah. But let's see what he can do with that.
Yeah, that we shall.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, of course, what's been going on in the news this week? I believe Chris, there's something you wanted to talk about.
Well, I mean, there's
the obvious stuff.
A number of stories. There's some obvious stories, but I think it might be worth mentioning right off the bat here. A Louisiana man this week he got arrested for something very different than we're used to. Let's just say that. Apparently, this guy, he's a 19-year-old guy named Joseph. He was confronted by his mother because suddenly there was actually like the honey buns were missing in the kitchen, and so she asked him about what was going on. Where are the honey buns? And so Joseph threw her up against the wall and started yelling and threatening her. And then the brother of Joseph came in to try and break up what was going on, and he pulled a knife on his brother. And then he got arrested. So he got arrested over honey buns.
Yeah.
Only in America, you know?
There's got to be something else to that.
Yeah, I'm sure there was something else going on. This guy might have had anger issues or something like that, but it culminated in the most hilarious way possible over honey buns. But that was one thing that happened this week.
Yeah, that's fun.
Did you guys get anything?
Well, in British news, the Brexit's going swimmingly on my usual update for Brexit. Some Tory activists have got this great idea now where we're going to leave the EU and impose 0% tariffs. Now, tariffs, for those who aren't familiar there, when someone brings goods into your country, they have to pay tariffs. If someone is selling in England, you're going to have to pay a certain amount of money.
Sort of like a tax, almost, on bringing it in.
So if you want to bring in stuff from, say, China, you got to pay a little bit of tax, right? And the idea is that money is leaving the country because obviously you're buying stuff from someone who's in China. So you're going to have to bring a little money in to do it.
Yeah.
because of if there's 0%, what it also does is it raises the prices of goods coming from outside the country. So it gives your internal producers a bit of an advantage. If you've got 0% tariffs, what happens is, your local producers are now having to compete on completely even field with companies who maybe don't have like labor laws, like China, who pay almost no wages, often uses things like slave labor.
Just about.
And
if not slave labor, it's pretty much like induced labor, probably, or something in some way.
And there's no mechanism to keep money in the country.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen is, of course, we're going to have loads of money leaving the country. And there's always a lot of Tory activists have this great idea to do this, to have 0% tariffs, because it'll make things cheaper. It's like, well, yeah, for a while, and then we just run out of money.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
You couldn't make this shit up.
Yeah, it makes sense.
In other news as well, Corbyn came out in support of leaving the EU and staying in the customs union, which... Now, I've been saying for a while that Brexit will raise food prices. As soon as Corbyn said that, a bunch of conservatives, leavers, said, no, that's a crazy idea, because that'll raise food prices. Yes, it will. All Brexit will raise food prices. We've been telling you this for a long time. Just because Corbyn now said it, now you're against it.
Right.
Of course they are.
You need a clean, complete Brexit. You can't just stay in the customs union. That'll raise food prices. And everyone says stay in the customs unit, but leaving will raise food prices. Yes, but it's the leaving bit that raises food prices, not the staying in.
Yeah. Did you have any stories that you wanted to highlight this week, Jordan?
Oh, gee.
There's a bunch of them out there. I know that.
Putting a spotlight on me.
Yeah.
Well,
do it now, Jordan.
Well, I'm not sure if I do, honestly.
Well, I have
been
some more at least, but.
Yeah, you certainly do. Yeah, I guess it's been just a lot of controversy as usual.
Yeah.
Like, with Trump and Jared Kushner and Ivanka, having their what is it called? Pretty much they got like their clearance, their security clearance, essentially, like demoted in a sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Fun fact: I now have a higher national security clearance than Jared.
Whoa!
because I've had all the background checks and stuff. You have an enhanced background check to be a teacher.
I mean, you're a physics major. Don't you get like some from that too, or is it just from the teaching?
Way back when, it's expired now, but way back when I went for a job at a company that they work on materials that'll absorb. Specifically, it was working on materials that will absorb sonar. So for submarines, stealth submarines. So I went to the interview, and I got a second interview, and they put through for the national security clearance, thinking I might get it.
Damn.
And the national security clearance came back before the then to get a second interview, so I had a level 1 national security clearance. Nothing major; they just check you're not obviously a terrorist. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, they just make sure you've got no like foreign interest or anything like this. You're not a terrorist. You're not got foreign interest. You're probably not going to sell anything. But with that, and like I say, it's probably expired by now. But with that, you've actually got a higher level of security clearance than Jared Kushner.
That's always interesting.
Which, yeah.
Yeah, I think I heard like 30-something people in the administration actually had their security clearance revoked because I guess their background checks or whatever came through.
Conflicts of interest.
Was that, Mike?
It's to do with conflicts of interest. To have your security clearance, you can't have anything that would compromise your secrecy. You can't have conflicts of interest. If you owe people a lot of money, for example, you can't have security clearance. Same with if you have a drinking problem or something.
Makes sense.
So it's the same sense if you've got business ties to your decisions that are going to be made in your job. So if you've got investment in a defense company, for example, and you're making decisions about defense, you can't have the security clearance for that because the worry is you'll make decisions based on your business ties. So you're expected to sever ties before getting a clearance. which of course they haven't done. So it's all about the conflict of interest.
Which is interesting. Also in the news this week, Ben Carson is under fire suddenly. Now the HUD, the Housing and Urban Development department that he runs right now, or he heads, I guess, has a spending limit on renovations to their offices of about $5,000, and this is legally binding. You know, they legally cannot spend more than $5,000 on renovations. And Mr. Carson was trying to spend $31,000 on just a dining set. And so there was a lady that was actually that works for HUD. She's worked for HUD for a very long time. She was in a position, and they go to her, I guess, to okay the spending. And she was like, yeah, no, we have a $5,000 limit. And they were like, that can't even buy a good chair. $5,000. And
I have to wonder, who sells a $31,000 dining set? Well, where do you go to buy this?
I forget the name of the organization, but they did say it in the in that piece that I read. It was like UBS brands or something like that. Something along those lines. I can't remember exactly.
What I mean is, you have to go looking for a very expensive set. Don't you? You can't just it's not like you just typed in buy a dining set and it came up. You have to actually go looking for the really high end stuff. You can't.
But I mean, the thing is,
if you go into any other furniture store ever, you will find a decent dining set for less than £100.
Yeah, I think the reason though is that this is Ben Carson. He was a doctor, and like doctors, like when they set up their own office, I'm sure they spend their own money for it, and they get paid pretty well, and so they are able to go and shop for those higher end products and everything. But he was under fire because of this, and recently he had backed off, and they canceled the order for this $31,000 dining set for an office building, or I think it was actually literally for his personal office. But yeah, they reneged on that, thankfully, because of pressure. But so that was happening this week. What else happened this week? Oh, a few school shootings. One of them was at least non-dangerous.
But one of them wasn't a school shooting. It was a shooting that happened to be at a school.
That's a very good difference there, Michael. I get it now. I see.
Yeah. So for background, one of the shootings that happened at a school, it wasn't in school. What happened was there was one of the students was living at the school, and his parents came over to pick him up for spring break, and for whatever reason he shot them, and that's been treated as a domestic, not a school shooting.
Yeah, but I didn't read into that. I think apparently he just come out of drugs rehab, and they think it's connected to that, but they don't really know. But I think it says I've had this argument with a few people now. No, that wasn't a school shooting. It just happened to be at the school. And I think it's telling when you get to the point where you have to distinguish between school shootings and shootings at schools.
Right.
When there's so many, you have to draw a line between them and say, no, these ones are school shootings and these ones.
Right.
In any other country, a shooting that happens at a school is a big thing.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether it's connected to the school or not.
There was also a shooting in Georgia where a teacher was actually arrested after the fact. There was a standoff and everything. The teacher pulled out his gun in the classroom and shot a round off or something like that, I think, in the classroom. And then after that, there was a standoff, and the cops eventually arrested him and everything. Nobody was hurt, thankfully. But
I don't know all the details, but what happened is he locked himself in his room without any students. Then the head teacher came with the gate to unlock the door, and he shot her around through the window.
Jeez.
Not the door window, like just one of the windows. It's not at the head teacher. And then the other police came and arrested him and stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know why.
Oh, man.
I don't know if it's known why exactly that happened yet. So let's arm the teachers. That's a great idea.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then the teachers will start shooting at the children. And then from that point on, we should start arming the children as everyone's armed.
That's a good idea,
protected.
Jordan. Oh, my God.
Yeah, I want to touch on that,
You've
actually.
touched on
arm
it,
the
Jordan.
teachers.
I think
'Cause
that's
that's-
perfect.
It's possibly one of the worst suggestions I've ever heard.
And who did that suggestion come from? Well, I have a clip for you guys to actually listen to here. It's Donald Trump talking about, the recent shooting. And, this Donald Trump himself has been talking about arming the teachers. And he wants to find money in the federal budget to arm as much as 1 million teachers. And for context, I believe what I read was we have 5 million teachers across the country. So he wants to literally arm 20% of all of our teachers.
Mm-hmm.
But
Freaking crazy.
And bear in mind, in the recent tax bill, they removed the provision that allows teachers to claim back school supplies on their taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So school supplies, no. Glocks, yes.
So yeah, if you buy pencils and papers for your children, yeah, you're not getting any money back from that. But if you hold a Glock, then you're good. You're going to actually get a pay raise now as a teacher because of Donald Trump. But let's get to this clip. He talks a little bit about his ideas and how disgraceful the deputies were during the shooting that happened.
We have to take steps to harden our schools so that they're less vulnerable to attack. This includes allowing well-trained and certified school personnel to carry concealed firearm. At some point, you need volume. Now, I don't know that a school is going to be able to hire 100 security guards that are armed. Plus, I got to watch some deputy sheriffs performing this weekend. They weren't exactly Medal of Honor winners, all right? The way they performed was, frankly, disgusting. They were listening to what was going on. The one in particular, he was early. Then you had 3 others that probably a similar deal a little bit later, but a similar kind of a thing.
What does it even mean?
I really believe, you don't know until you test it, but I think I really believe I'd run in there even if I didn't have a weapon. And I think most of the people in this room would have done that too, because I know most of you. But the way they performed was really a disgrace.
President of the United States, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, God.
So, thoughts on that?
I mean, there's so much there. It's hard to...
Oh, my God. It's amazing. We should have just done a podcast just on this, as our primary topic, but it's not even our primary topic yet.
We just started talking about it. But we'll get to that. While, first of all, I don't blame the police guy as a person. You don't know how you're going to react to being shot at until you get shot at.
I mean,
this guy didn't act very well.
He even acknowledged that in that piece too.
And he resigned. But yeah, like I say, you don't know how it is until you test it, and it tested, and that guy didn't handle it, so he's not a police officer anymore.
Yeah,
that's all right.
Yeah,
Trump, I'm going to tell you, there is not a chance in hell he was going to run in towards a school shooter. Any shooter. He's not going to run, for fuck's sake.
That dude doesn't run.
But guys, wouldn't it have been great if he did?
You know what he might have done is he might have taken that golf cart that he drove behind the other UN leaders.
Crash into the front door.
He might have came in with his little golf cart and be like, "Hey, you better stop that shooting over there, or else I'm gonna come over there with my jazzy." And that might have actually happened, but maybe not. Well,
no, it would have been more like, "Please don't shoot me. I beg you."
Oh, there's a shooting over there. I'm going to be over at the cafe over there, and let me know when things are wrapped up. Thanks. And that would be Trump. The guy is such a fucking coward, and he's sitting here calling into question these officers when this is literally the same guy that did not go to Vietnam. He was drafted to go to Vietnam, and this motherfucker got like 5 different deferments, 4 of them for college, and actually, from what I remember seeing on the topic, he wasn't actually in college at the time either, in part of it at the very least. So he was using the college deferments when he wasn't actually in college, and then he had quote unquote bone spurs. And this is like a growth that can happen to the foot that makes it really painful to walk around on, essentially, I would imagine. Yet, at this very same time, this was the same guy that was doing all kinds of sports activities and everything, running around and playing sports, yet he had bone spurs and he couldn't go into the military. It's interesting how that works.
He had a rich dad who got it out of it.
Yeah, and this was Vietnam, like I said, and he talked on Howard Stern's program at one point about his own personal Vietnam, and I actually have a clip of that too, which is pretty amazing. Let's listen to that real quick too.
Now, getting back to dating, right? And when you got to say to a woman, hey, listen, you got to go to my personal doctor and I'm going to have you checked out. Is that a tough thing to say to a woman, or you just got the balls to say it?
You know, I'll tell you, it's amazing. I can't even believe it. I've been so lucky,
right,
in terms of that whole world.
You've never gotten a social disease.
It is a dangerous world out there. It's scary. It's like Vietnam, sort of like, the Vietnam era.
It is your personal Vietnam, isn't it?
It is my personal
It is. You've said that many
I feel
times.
like a great and very brave soldier.
A lot of guys who went through Vietnam came out unscathed. A lot of guys who've gone through the 80s having sex with different women came out with AIDS and all kinds of things.
They survived Vietnam.
This is better than Vietnam, but it's
a little better. But every vagina is a landmine. Haven't we both said that in private?
A
potential landmine.
I think it is.
That's right. So
there's some real danger.
And to think, at one point, I actually was a big fan of Howard Stern's show. Mm-hmm. It's interesting how the context has shifted in our world today. And the Me Too movement and women's rights are in the forefront of our minds now. And now I'm appalled and aghast by what he was saying there, even Mr. Howard Stern himself. And even Robin, his co-host there. A woman sitting there and laughing about how women can potentially be landmines for STDs. And laughing about it and everything. That it just disturbs me.
Vile.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
There's just so much bad about it, man, at this point. And it's different context. We get it. Things were different back then. But good God, man, how insensitive that can be. And then to say that he had his own personal Vietnam by dodging STDs, essentially, is what he was saying. Mm-hmm. He went through a war of going and dodging STDs by sleeping with as many women as he possibly could. Oh my goodness. You brave little soldier, as he calls himself. My goodness.
What did he say? It wasn't brave, it was very... I can't remember what he said. It's nonsense anyways.
It's like brave something little soldier or something like that, I think. But it's already like bleached out of my mind because it's just so fucking annoying to me. I don't want to.
I try not to listen to it because it's so.
God damn, man.
I can't help but feel a bit grossed out every time I hear it.
So that's the same guy basically saying that these sheriffs were cowards, and this is the same guy that is saying that he was a brave soldier for dodging STDs in the 80s when other men better than himself were dying on a battlefield somewhere.
Right.
But anyway.
He's a sad little man, one that has an extensive history in which should have disqualified him from even being a candidate for the Republican Party. Mm-hmm. And yet, here he is. Yep.
But anyway, good God, I need to not talk about it at this point. So let's get into our main topic, I think. Yeah.
So our main topic for the day, we're going to be talking about vaccinations. So, of course, Trump is an anti-vaxxer, and there's many anti-vaxxers in the GOP, less so in the Democrats.
Though they do still exist on the left wing of things.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And the Green Party, there's an awful lot in the Green Party.
It's actually like the Green Party has it written into their platform, I think, in such a way that it does allow room for anti-vaxxers. I believe.
I didn't know that. I know there's a few of them that are pretty anti-vax.
Yeah.
Anti-GMO, anti-nuclear, all this stuff, but also anti-vax. So I want to start by talking about what are these vaccine things. So vaccines are a little injection you get. There's a whole bunch of different ones, and the idea is it will make you immune to a certain disease. I think we all know we've probably all had shots.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is it's like giving your body a lesson in how to fight that specific disease. It gives you either a weakened or a dead form of a certain disease, and then your body learns to fight it. So then when the real disease comes along, it can deal with it.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different ones. I think one of them was was it TMR? I think was the one vaccine. I think it's like tuberculosis, measles, and rubella. I believe was the one injection. And obviously that fights 3 different diseases or disorders in itself: the rubella virus, measles, and tuberculosis. And these 3 were terrifying back before we had these
vaccines. There's a whole bunch of diseases on here that were absolutely devastating once upon a time. The 6-in-1 vaccine, which you have at 8 weeks. Yeah, 8 weeks. Diphtheria, hepatitis, hemophilus, which I don't know what that is, polio, tetanus, and whooping cough. These are all massive killers.
Yeah.
Back in the day, but now we barely hear of them because everyone's vaccinated.
That's right.
Obviously, the infamous smallpox vaccine, which we'll be talking about soon. So yeah, vaccines are pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And what I want to do today is make sure we make the case for vaccines, look at why anti-vaxxers don't like them, and why they're stupid.
I guess.
So, let's get into the history of them.
Yeah, where did vaccines come from, Mike?
So I was actually really interested here. So it turns out vaccines actually go right far as back as 430 BC.
Wow.
Yeah. So there was some Greek historian, there was a smallpox plague in Athens. And what happened is he noticed that if you got smallpox, there's I think it was about 2 in 3 chance that you were going to die. If you didn't die, he noticed you never got it again. It's that's a bit strange. Of course, they didn't come up with the idea of infecting people with it deliberately, but he noticed that there's something going on here. People, for some reason, people don't get it again.
Yeah.
Apparently, the Chinese were the first to discover it and actually make the first sort of useful use out of it. In 900 AD, they got smallpox scabs and infected people with it by putting it under the person's skin.
Wow.
And they would infect people with the disease, they'd get it, be ill for a while, and then develop an immunity and then never get smallpox again. And then later on it spread around the world. A bloke called Edward Jenner in Britain also discovered it. He made the vaccination its modern form. The way they actually take the bacteria and the viruses themselves and inject them into a person. And weaken them and kill the virus off, and then inject it into a person. There's something I want to talk about specifically, though, because I think it gets to a big myth, and I think it's really interesting to know. Vaccines probably came to America from an African slave. It's something we were talking about before the show because we were all really fascinated.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
At the time, of course, smallpox is ravaging the world. Smallpox is a really, really nasty disease. Like I say, it kills loads of people. It infects. It's very high infection rate, so it infects loads of people. It's really, really nasty illness. But not in Africa. And it turned out some of the African tribes had developed a way to immunize themselves against the disease. And what they'd do, they'd make a small cut in the arm, put some pus from an infected person underneath, and then seal it up. The person would be sick for a while, and then they'd be immune. Similar to the Chinese one. We don't know exactly when it was developed, because, of course, the African culture was passed down through oral traditions, so there's no date or time for when it was developed, but at least before colonial times. Probably a couple of hundred years before that. So you're probably talking 14th, 15th century. And one of the slaves from Africa, a guy called Onesimus, is that how we ended up pronouncing it?
It looks to me like Onesimus too, yeah.
Yeah.
So he was a slave, came from Africa, and he was sold to a doctor from America called Edward Jenner? No, Cotton Mather. Sorry, he's the British guy. Cotton Mather. Have I cut off?
No, you're still there, yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry, everything went really silent for me then. Cotton Mather was a doctor in Boston.
We were waiting with bated breath, Michael.
So Cotton Mather is this doctor in Boston, and he asked his slave, how did you not get smallpox? Because slaves that had this scar on their arm where they'd been caught were worth more because they were immune to smallpox. He asked him, how does it happen? And he described the procedure, how they cut into his arm and he put some pus into it. And this doctor from Boston took that procedure and applied it to, I think it was Ebola, and developed a vaccine based on this idea. And it was smallpox.
Yeah, it was smallpox for Onesimus, yeah.
So it's possible that vaccination came to America via this African slave rather than the British.
I would say that's absolutely what the stories are saying in the history. So it's interesting how
the reason I want to mention it is because people think Africans never invented anything.
Yeah. And
when Africa actually had a really advanced medical field, they invented cesarean sections and cataract surgery, and were doing them successfully before the Europeans even thought about them, and they invented these vaccinations.
Yeah, but you know what was one interesting pushback at the time of Onesimus and Cotton Mathers? Do you know what the anti-vaxxers were all up in arms and upset about? In regards to this smallpox vaccination? Well, I can give you a hint here. This is America.
That guy?
Exactly. It came from an African slave, so therefore it's automatically terrible, and there was a lot of pushback in the colonies because of it, and they even called Cotton Mathers himself Negro-ish and everything because he was pushing this vaccination that came from his African slave. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting that back in the early 1700s that we have this kind of racist bullshit going on, and we haven't really changed a huge amount since then.
Not at all. And there was another.
So the roots of anti-vax might be racism.
Yes,
at least in America.
And there were some other interesting arguments, such as definitely interesting. Which was one was it's kind of tampering with God's plan, in a sense. The
religious stuff.
Yep, all the religious stuff, and of course there was also some fear surrounding the bubonic plague. How its rise was taking over France and how it could potentially affect Bostonians. So some was a little frazzled from that experience, from those experiences too. Yeah. So there's a lot of hysteria going on.
Yeah, and it is worrying to be saying, we're going to actually infect you with the virus and then things are going to get better for you. And that can lead to some like, wait a minute, you're going to give me the virus and then I'm going to be better.
Right.
Yeah, there is some, it's not quite as straightforward as with modern vaccines, of course. The virus is often dead, so you can't actually catch it.
Yeah.
To clarify, we call it a live virus if it's a weakened virus. And it is technically possible to catch it, but a healthy person won't because it's weakened.
Yeah.
With a dead virus, the virus itself has been deactivated, so it can't infect you. It's impossible to catch the virus. So the flu shot, for example, is dead.
Right. And I can't even be like too angry or disappointed at the people at that time for being so skeptical of the inoculation, because it's like that almost sounds illogical. Like how does giving it to me decrease the risk of me actually getting the full disease? Like how does that even work?
Yeah.
And especially because around that time the scientific data wasn't as foolproof as it is now.
I don't blame them so much.
I mean,
I do blame the modern anti-vaxxers.
The one problem with it, though, was when their argument was, well, it's from black people, so therefore let's discredit it. That in itself is a reason to say, yeah, no, fuck you.
No, certainly.
But like, if there's a legitimate reason, that's a different story altogether.
Yeah, true.
But one thing that I did want to mention, though, about it was, at the time, the way that they actually did administer the vaccination in itself was actually really problematic in the States. So what would happen was the doctor would have at least 2 different children in attendance, one with the virus already, and then one without. And so what would happen was they would use a knife and cut open one of the boils of one of the infected children, and cut open the arm of the other child that doesn't have it, and they would sort of scoop out some of the pus from the boil and put it into the other kid, and this was how they were vaccinating. Now, the problem came in when they didn't actually understand sterilization yet. And so
that was a problem. Infections.
The doctors wouldn't sterilize the knife from kid to kid, and so what would happen then is, if this kid had another problem, it would then get transferred over to the next and the next and the next.
It's no problem. You can get infection on the knife. You can get infection from the open wound. You get all sorts of things can go wrong.
Yeah. So that was a big problem, and some people did lose their arms because of this, and this was leading to hysteria against the vaccines itself too. And so there were legitimate reasons to be against the viruses. It's just when the only argument you have is against, well, it's black people, so those Negroes, we can't trust them. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up.
You get it. Go on.
Basically.
Well, of course, even nowadays with our much more modern understanding, there's a lot of anti-vaxxers about.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do is talk about a few common arguments for anti-vax, sort of dismantle them. So let's start. Which argument do you think is the most common one for anti-vax? Which one do you hear the most?
Jordan, you got any ideas? I can't. I'm drawing a blank right now.
Well, the one I was
putting us on the spot, Michael. Damn it!
The one I hear the most is the one that was at the Republican debate, where they said, "I'm not against vaccine. I think there's too many too soon for children."
Yes.
So I was looking into it, and it turns out that vaccines have about 50 antigens in them. You might say 50. Wow, that's a lot. There's 50 of them. Mm-hmm. A baby's immune system can handle, I think it was about 10,000 a day or 1,000 a day. Can't remember exactly.
That might be what they're subjected to, actually, per day as well, actually.
Yeah, maybe. But there was a certain amount they could handle, and it was just a stupid amount more than the vaccine, is my point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I did the maths tonight, and I worked out in order to stress the immune system with the and you'd have to inject them with a literal bathtub full before they get sick.
Yeah. And I mean, that in itself, like, yeah, like we're talking about like these vaccinations only have a very, very small amount of the actual disease in itself, and usually those cells are either dead, like we were saying, or in a weakened state by the other ingredients in the vaccination or
So
something.
what some anti-vaxxers, I'm going to call them anti-vaxxers because they're still denying science, they want to stretch the schedule out. So there's a vaccine schedule where you're supposed to have the vaccine at a certain period of time. The thing is, the schedule is designed so that you have the vaccines when you need it the most, so when you're more likely to be exposed. So some of them would be before you start school. You get the vaccine, so your immunity is the highest when you're at school.
Makes sense.
In that way, you can't just stretch the schedule out then, because then it's not as effective. The schedule is designed to be as effective as possible.
And I mean, I think we have to also note here, actually, also, we forgot to mention with what happens with vaccinations is, in the modern sense, at the very least, vaccinations are what we tend to call the way that they work is through herd immunization, and so this means
I should talk about that.
Yeah, we probably should have mentioned it, but we're mentioning it now. It's okay. But herd immunization basically means that we immunize as many people as we can, and it puts sort of like a firewall between people that don't have the vaccinations yet and people that are infected with these diseases.
Yeah. So there are some people that legitimately can't have vaccine for various reasons. They're very rare. But for example, you can't get a live vaccine if you have had a transplanted organ. Something happened to me because I have one. Which is why dead vaccines are really important to me. Some people are allergic to certain things in the vaccines. And there's other reasons you can't have them. The thing is, this herd immunity, so what they rely on is herd immunity. And what that means is, if everyone around you is vaccinated, they form like a wall between you and everyone else. So let's say there's another person who's infected and you. And if you come into contact with them, let's say you will get infected 100%. If there's a person who's vaccinated, let's say the vaccine reduces your chances of getting it by 50%. So there's one person between you and them. You've got a 50% chance of getting it because they've got a 50% chance of getting it, and then you get it. If there's two people, of course, it's now 25%, it's halved again. If there's three people, it's 12%. So the more people that have the vaccine, the less chance you've got of getting it. Now, most vaccines are at 97% effective. So you see how if there's three people between you, 97% of 3% of 3% of 3% is your chance of getting it through them. It's almost zero.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult to get it. And that's how this herd immunity works. It forms a barrier between you and anyone who is infected.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important. It definitely is important. And
it is really important.
Yeah.
But you probably know about, you're in regular contact with about 100 people, usually. 100 to 120, 100 to 150 people, depending on your job and what you do and stuff. Obviously, because I'm in a school, it's a couple of thousand because I teach a lot of kids and stuff.
Yeah. And
if you work in an office, it'll be a few hundred.
Yeah, us in our office, easily a few hundred there. But then there's also, like, things can happen, like their kids can have some kind of sickness, and then their parents then can track it all the way to work, you know? And so it's not just those 100 people that we work with. It's their kids, it's their family members, it's their friends, it's their spouses.
Right, because you know, you're probably in contact with about 100 people, so the vaccination rate needs to be at least 99%, and the higher the better. Mm-hmm. Which is why even if a few people stop taking it, it can have massive effects on the rates of vaccination, which is why we keep getting measles outbreaks, because 5% of people don't get the vaccine, and all of a sudden the illness is the measles has a way to spread through the population now.
Yeah.
5% doesn't sound like much, but that's 1 in 20 people, and you easily meet 20 people.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's a mess, and we need this herd immunity, And did you have anything to add, Jordan?
I actually do. I found something out actually, and that is today, or this month is it is exactly 20 years from this month that Andrew Wakefield, who was a doctor.
That cunt. Was a doctor.
Was a doctor. Exactly.
Very important point. Was a doctor, yes.
Right. Thank you. But yeah, since he published his study on the link, on a potential link, well, in his case, irrefutable link between the measles and autism. And
what he did, fun fact, he wasn't actually an anti-vaxxer at the time. He was working for a company that sold single vaccines. So they sold measles vaccine, mumps vaccine, and a rubella vaccine. And there was this new vaccine that was out, was the MMR jab, which was all three together. So they wanted some research that would discredit the combined vaccine, so people would then buy the separate ones. So what he did was he got a bunch of kids with autism, and don't you know, they were all vaccinated. That's your link.
Mm-hmm.
Almost every kid's vaccinated, so of course that's bullshit.
Yeah.
The reason he was struck off, though, wasn't the bad research. It was because of his unethical practices. He did things like drawing blood from kids at birthday parties.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, he was a pretty sick person. And that's why he was struck off for unethical practice.
That's interesting. But since then, though, he has been one of the main voices, though, still in opposition to vaccination. And
yeah, only later to become a proper anti-vaxxer and rejecting all vaccines. But originally it was because he was paid by a group that wanted to discredit the combined vaccine.
Yeah. And so that happened. He was discredited. He lost his license to practice medicine, so he's no longer a doctor. And that happened. But the anti-vaxxer movement today that's still going very strong definitely relies heavily on his studies still.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And
it's come up with new theories to explain why, but the truth is there is no link. It's been studied so heavily, and there's no link at all.
Yeah, scientists have been studying this, and no other scientist, no other study has ever found a link. And the problem with this has been, like you said, he started out by saying, okay, it's this MMR vaccination. This MMR shot is what's causing it. And we've definitively found out that's not the case. And then the anti-vaxxers found out, oh wait, there's actually this one ingredient in this one vaccine that's actually a form of mercury.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely that's causing
a compound of mercury, which it sounds really nasty because mercury is very toxic. But remember that table salt, is sodium chloride, which is sodium's high explosive, and chlorine will melt your lungs.
Yeah.
But of course, you put them together, it's just table salt.
Yeah. But the
chemistry, compounds of elements don't have the same properties as the element. That's important to remember that.
Yeah, very
so
very good
in this case, it's mercury and something else, which doesn't have the same properties as mercury.
Yeah. But they were claiming that mercury compound was the one. That's now what is actually causing the autism. And there's been numerous studies that showed that that's not true. And yet, even in the wake of that, the scientific community, the medical community, actually did pull that ingredient out of most vaccinations anyway.
Yeah,
just
they
because,
found, they found a chemical that does the same job but better, so they just removed it.
Yeah. And they figured, I guess, at the time, you know what? let's just get the headache out of the way, just take it out and appease these people, even though we've done all these studies that show that it actually literally has no link to autism at all. And yet...
So do you agree they thought cause the autism isn't there anymore?
Yeah.
And they still claim it causes autism.
Yeah. But now, I guess the main thing that people are pointing to is like, oh, well, it's all of them all together at the same, like, they're too soon. All of these shots are coming in too soon, and that's what's causing the autism. You know, you can see a pattern here, right? Where it's this now. Some say there's all sorts of ingredients in the vaccine. Some of them are very scary sounding. Formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is a natural product. The body produces it anyway. And the formaldehyde's there because it's, if I remember correctly, the formaldehyde's there in live vaccines to stop the virus from reproducing. Yeah.
I think that's what it does.
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying, there are different chemicals in these to keep these viruses weak, in a weakened state, so that you can fight them off much, much easier.
Really easily, yeah.
Yeah.
But so they say there's all sorts of chemicals in them, not realizing that a little bit of a chemical isn't going to kill you. Isn't even going to make you ill.
Yeah.
You have far worse every day.
It's essentially the argument of the God of the gaps. You know, it's the same principle here going on, unfortunately. Where
it's because they've started from the idea that vaccines cause autism, then they just jump to anything that will try and explain it.
Yeah. And no matter what evidence comes out of the scientific community and the medical community, they just shift the goalposts then, you know,
right?
And it's something else then. It's something else.
But you know what, guys? We have to identify who these anti-vaxxers are. So yeah, let's do that. I mean, these people are concerned
Republicans, mostly in America.
True.
But in America, in general, the general Republican politicians, there's some on the left as well, who just hate the pharmaceutical side of things, and they don't trust the pharmaceutical companies, so they think vaccines don't work, even though other countries also use vaccines. The NHS pushes vaccines because they are great. I mean, you've got a medical procedure, vaccination, which is highly effective, like most of them, like 97% effective, completely safe. What I forgot to mention, but the accident rates with vaccines, even including minor illnesses, are like 1 in hundreds of thousands. So they're really safe, really effective, and cheap. Vaccines are cheap to make, and companies don't make much profit off them.
Yeah.
Why are you against this? This is like the holy grail of medical procedures.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's one of those things of you don't know what you got until it's gone. Where it's like we've been so far removed from history that I mean there's huge swaths of society that just completely just are unaware of its effectiveness and and how good we have it now in comparison to how our ancestors had it.
Yeah.
I think it was you, Chris, who said what was it? We don't have diseases, so people are against vaccines. So, well, why would we need to vaccinate against polio? Because we don't have polio.
Yeah.
Not realizing that the reason we don't have polio is because we vaccinate against it.
Exactly. Yeah. Like there are anti-vaxxers that are also on the left wing side of things that do have that argument, and there's going to be a documentary that I'm going to absolutely include with this from PBS. Frontline. It's absolutely a must watch, in my opinion, for you guys out there that are interested in this topic. They do talk to some anti-vaxxers, and one of the anti-vaxxers that they talk to, that's literally one of the reasons why she doesn't think that we should have vaccines, because especially the
the computer crashed and then.
Yeah, I'm recording now, and yeah, it's good. Okay, so the computer crashed here, guys, and yeah, it's great. But we saved the project and everything. We're good. I was just talking about
It's that great moment when you look at each other going, where's Chris gone?
You were just saying something, Chris. Where are you still there? But yeah, I think what I was just saying though was the one anti-vaxxer lady in the documentary that I'm going to be posting with this was saying basically we don't need the polio virus anymore because we haven't had an outbreak in decades, and that was her reasoning for it. Even though there's polio outbreaks around other parts of the world right now, and in a global world that we live in, these things travel, and that's the problem with doing that. Now, I think we want to eventually get onto the smallpox vaccination, because that is quite important in itself. But I can hear a lot of typing over there, Mike.
Sorry, I thought I'd muted.
But that's okay. But did you have a something to add for that, Jordan? You had a good point that my computer crashed and we lost it all.
Jeez, now I think I may need some help with my point.
You were talking about how in the US some of the distrust of vaccines might be caused by the fact that it's a paid system.
Yeah.
Because obviously in America, you have this, you want to avoid going to the doctors, and the doctors are trying to sell you things.
Right.
And so you naturally distrust everything they say. Whereas in Europe and the UK, you go to the doctor and they're not really trying to sell you anything, they're just trying to give you healthcare.
Yeah, what
so
you
the doctor
need.
says, yeah, you should probably get this vaccine. There's no interest in it for them, so there's a bit more trust automatically.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like they're trying to upsell you different things over there, whereas that's kind of what they do over here.
Right.
In ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And of course that kind of came out of a conversation that Mike and I had about this young
Jordan? Are you
there?
No,
don't Jordan. Jordan can't go as well.
Jordan died. Oh no, it's Jordan's time now. He's crashed, I think.
But she's been
there he is.
The articles that
Jordan,
sharing
hold
around.
on, Jordan.
You cut off for 10 seconds.
Yeah, you were just gone.
I lost power. I lost freaking power.
Sad.
That's incredible.
Not winning. We are just having the best show ever this week.
Just technically, she's at the wazoo.
Hey,
so we got
What should I do? Because
we got you saying we were talking about a young.
Okay.
If you want to finish your thought, and if you have to go, we can finish off without you if you need to go.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I'm going to do that. All right. You want me to finish my thought?
If you wanted to.
You can. I can. I know what you're going to say. So.
Okay. Cool. All right. So have a young woman, a young female coworker has young children, and she's skeptical of vaccines. Damn, I don't think it's going to work, guys.
It's all right, Jordan. We understand. The power's out over there, and you're just low energy right now. It's okay.
Yeah, my house is.
But,
or these power lines. God,
yeah.
I wasn't even charging my phone.
Well, Jordan, maybe they're in some way related. The crashing of my computer and your system, your issue. But
it's actually not impossible. Yeah.
I mean, we're really far away from each other in the state, but you never know. But well, Jordan, you have a good night, and I hope the best for you guys. I hope the power comes back on real shortly.
Thanks, man. Me too.
But, yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks, appreciate it. All right, good luck with the show.
Thanks.
So anyway, let's let that be a last technical problem.
Now Mike crashes.
Yeah, now
it's
I
your
crash.
turn next.
Well, earlier the cat nearly stood on the power button, so it was one of them where I had to grab the cat quickly. What was Jordan saying?
I think he was trying to say like a nice little anecdote where there's a girl at work that has kids or something like that, and she is worried about like having the shots done and everything.
It came about because me and Jordan when you crashed, Chris, me and Jordan were talking, and we said, he mentioned that he knows this girl at work who's got kids, and she sees memes on Facebook about how vaccines are horrible and they're going to kill you and all this. And I was saying it's really irresponsible to share medical information if you're not a doctor. Hell, it's irresponsible if you are a doctor, because you're not that person's doctor. You don't have that person's medical record.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm coughing like crazy at the moment.
Yeah, I kind of do too, but I usually mute myself. Thanks.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Yeah, I mean,
if you're on Facebook, just always, there's some general stuff like you should eat more vegetables and get more exercise. Everyone could do with that. But in general, it's just a bad idea to try and share medical information.
Yeah. I mean,
if you tell them to go to a doctor. And I mentioned that it's a bit more complicated in the US because, you've got to pay for it, but
yeah, and like you were saying, I think earlier, that does lead to us distrusting our medical field and everything. Because our system is built off of for-profit institutions like our drug companies and our medical insurance companies, people distrust the medical community, and not unnecessarily so. And so, we can absolutely understand where a lot of the anti-vax movement comes from in that regard here. It's just the scientific community in itself, though, is saying that this is safe, and there's really no real danger of ever getting autism. Autism is not a thing when it comes to vaccinations. Now, there are other ancillary issues that do happen for some people that do lead to that. One thing is some people will get a seizure after getting a vaccination, and this
is rare as fuck, though.
It's very rare, but I think what the science is saying, though, is that it actually has nothing to do necessarily with the vaccination in itself. It's just that these people were going to have a seizure regardless if they took this vaccination or if they got really sick. And so what that shows to us is that it's not really the vaccination, it was just something that was already predisposed in the person, maybe genetically, that they were going to start having chronic seizures, even if they didn't take the vaccination. If they would have gotten sick one day, they would have had their first ulcer or their first seizure, and that would have led to the chronic seizures that some people attribute or try to attribute to the vaccinations.
There's also a common problem in there's a big push in the UK at the moment to try and decentralize vaccinations, because in the past, you'd go to your doctors and get your vaccine there. The problem is the doctor's got a waiting room full of sick people. So you go to that waiting room, you catch something off someone, you get your vaccine, and then, of course, you're sick for a few days. And you think the vaccine's caused it. And it hasn't. It's just because you're in a waiting room full of people. So nowadays, they try and do vaccines at shopping malls and schools and things and workplaces.
Which I would still say aren't really the greatest way to do it, I don't think, anyway. But,
it's better than a waiting room full of sick people.
Yeah. I guess there's less sick people, but there's still a lot of people around regardless. And
but there being lots of people isn't the problem. The problem is if you're sat next to a sick person for 20 minutes while you're waiting, walking past someone, you're probably not going to get anything. But
the chances of there being sick people in an office setting or in a school setting is very high too. That's what I'm trying to say, But I guess there is a more concentrated population of sick people. That's the idea. Yeah.
So hopefully that'll reduce those rates a bit, and then with that, vaccination fears will go down.
Yeah. The most, I think the most common reaction that is negative with regards to vaccinations is rashes, but even them themselves are I believe the count was 1 in a few 100,000 or 100,000 in something.
They're really rare.
So
any reaction's really rare. But because we're going on quite a long time, I just wanted to finish up by mentioning some of the future. of vaccines,
Yeah.
including a really exciting one I found out about. They're developing a type of vaccine for type 1 diabetes, which that would be a massive step forward.
That's huge.
That's incredible.
Massive.
That's massive. Loads of people get type 1 diabetes.
Yeah. Especially in America.
It's not the obesity one. That's type 2, I think.
All right, never mind.
In type 1 diabetes, what happens is your immune system attacks the cells which produce insulin, I think. So generally, you'd have to take immunosuppressants to stop them. But immunosuppressants aren't great because there are loads of side effects and leave you open to infection.
Yeah.
What this vaccine does is sort of a reverse vaccine. Instead of making your immune system react, it stops your immune system reacting. So it teaches your immune system to stop attacking your insulin.
Yeah, and hopefully they do more research on that. That does sound a little worrying in some instances, but hopefully it's a good thing. I don't know.
Yeah, it will be great. I mean, if you could stop people getting type 1 diabetes, that's incredible.
But does it stop your immune system from reacting in other situations?
No,
the one thing
that's
that
the point.
worry about.
It's specific.
All right.
It trains it to stop attacking a specific type of cell.
All right. I did want to mention that we didn't mention earlier, smallpox. There was the vaccination process with smallpox. We don't have smallpox anymore.
Yeah, there is none. There's some smallpox
eradicated
in labs. There's some smallpox that still exists in laboratories to study, but that's it.
It's been eradicated from the world almost completely.
Yeah, smallpox was a good one because it's such a bad disease.
Yeah.
There was a big push internationally to wipe it out, and you only need one shot. So it was really easy to relatively easy to wipe out. But yeah, a big push for it internationally, and we eradicated it from the wild. You cannot get smallpox now.
Yeah, and that is because of the vaccinations.
Yeah.
That is literally what it was from.
We almost wiped out polio, but it came back.
We were on the path of doing it, and then the anti-vaxxer movement picked up. And
well, we thought we'd done it, and then there was it came out from somewhere. It must have been hiding in a pocket.
Yeah, but the anti-vaxxing, I think, also helped it along to grow a little bit more again. Because I think in that documentary that I'm going to link, they actually do talk about that. And they do say in that the anti-vaxxing movement at the time did help, slow down the eradication of polio. We can maybe still do it, but it's been drastically slowed down, and the timetable of eradicating it has increased in length.
Yeah, and this is really touches on what is the future potential of vaccines, the real potential of vaccines. We can wipe out diseases entirely by making everyone immune to them.
Yeah, like smallpox. Exactly.
Yeah. Like I say, you can go anywhere in the world, you will not catch smallpox because it's gone.
Yeah.
We can do this with polio and diphtheria and tuberculosis and all these diseases. We could wipe them out completely if we did this properly.
Yeah. But the anti-vaxxing movement is impeding that ability. Is the problem with it? But let's just look at the risks though of the two differences. Anti-vaxxers are afraid of largely of autism and the chronic seizures that can potentially start up from these vaccinations. But the numbers that I've seen on just the seizures themselves is maybe 1 in a million people may develop seizures, and it's such a small percentage of people that they don't actually know if it's literally caused by the vaccinations or something else.
Yeah, in order to study, you need enough people, and they can't get enough people because it's so vanishingly rare.
And it's the same situation, though, as well with the autism. There's literally no significant tie-in with the vaccinations at all. There's no evidence that shows that vaccinations cause any autism. And so, but on the other side, these diseases that we're trying to get rid of, like tuberculosis, measles, rubella disease, what are the other ones? Mumps and whatever the other ones are.
Rubella, diphtheria, meningitis.
Yeah.
And obviously polio, or loads. Pneumococcal vaccine, the new one.
Yeah. But the problem with these diseases in themselves was they infected large amounts of people. Like literally yearly, there'd be hundreds of thousands of people being diagnosed with these diseases. Just, I think, in the United States before we started vaccinating.
The pneumonia vaccine is a relatively new one, and that was a huge killer, pneumonia. Yeah. That's like I've been vaccinated for that, so I'm immune to it.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, it's a good thing. But yeah, the risks of these diseases, though, like there'd be hundreds of thousands of people every year being diagnosed with these diseases, and a handful of people dying from these diseases every single year. And in that documentary, it shows actual video of a baby with whooping cough, which is another one of those diseases. And it's terrifying. The kid can't breathe, and it's just sitting there coughing for its life. And these are the diseases and the viruses and the disorders that we're trying to cure with these vaccines. And the thing I think with this child in the thing that caught the whooping cough, I might be wrong. I might be like mixing this up with another case that they were talking about. But one of the cases that happened was a child got sick because their sibling or their brother or sister went to school, and one of the other kids at school had the disease. And so what happened was the sibling tracked it back home, and the baby got it. And the baby was too young to have had the immunization yet. And so this shows the reason why we herd immunize, because it makes it harder for that to happen, because that child wasn't actually scheduled yet to get the actual vaccination for that yet. And like, this isn't BS, guys. I mean, this is real,
Life and death.
Yeah, these diseases are terrifying. And the reason why people today don't understand that is we've not seen it in our lives. I've never seen anyone with polio. I've never seen anyone with whooping cough. I've never seen it. And so because of that, I'm going to have a slightly skewed position when it comes to these diseases. They don't feel like a real threat, right? And I want to be as fair as I can to the parents, because I think where everyone comes down to the vaccination movement, pro-vaccination, anti-vaccination, what we all ultimately want to do is what's best for the children and what's best for society. I don't want these children unnecessarily dying or catching, or getting autism. If these vaccinations were giving people and these children autism, I would be 100% with you guys on the anti-vaxxing movement, because no, we shouldn't be doing that to our children. But that's just literally not the case. And it's tough. These parents, I feel like some of it boils down to these parents, because a lot of the most outspoken of these parents are the parents that did get their kids vaccinated, and now their kid has autism, and they feel like it's their fault. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Just because you got your kid this vaccination doesn't mean it's your fault. It's not your fault at all that your kid has it. And I really think that people really need to start understanding that more. And
yeah, you need to play the chances, and the chances are so heavily in favor of vaccinating. It's not even funny.
Yeah. I mean, you will have a much higher chance of your child dying to tuberculosis or polio or any of those other diseases. Pneumonia. Yeah. You'll have a much higher chance of your child dying to those than you will of them getting autism. I guarantee it.
So
we need to understand. Yeah, we're going to wrap up in a second. We just need to understand, though, that autism is not tied to vaccinations, and we need people to start understanding that more. We get it, guys. You don't want your kid to unnecessarily get some kind of disorder that's going to ruin the rest of their life. I don't want them to get that either. You know, I'm 1000% with you on that. But this makes everyone safer in the long run. And we can, like we were saying, eradicate these diseases once and for all. And then once we eradicate them, then we can stop vaccinating for it, maybe at that point, because they're gone. And that's what we've done with the smallpox. We don't vaccinate for it anymore because it's gone. It's eradicated. And so, oh man, guys, I mean, I really hope we can reach some people with this, and I hope more parents actually vaccinate their children, because this is very important. But with that, guys, I mean, I guess we should wrap up like you were saying. But
yeah.
Yeah. Jordan couldn't stick it out, but, you know.
Did his power die or something?
I think what it sounded like he said was his power died, and yeah, I guess there's no lights in his house anymore. He usually connects to the calls through his phone, and I guess what happened was when he died was like it was switching from Wi-Fi to his phone network or something like that. So that's probably why there was an interruption. But
then he had to go for some reason connected to that, I think.
Yeah, that's my guess. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I really hope you've enjoyed this discussion. If you guys have any suggestions on topics you would like to hear us discuss in the future, we actually have an email that you can email us suggestions to at theevolutionofnow@gmail.com. We also have a Discord open we actually have a few people in there, guys, and we're kind of a big deal now, you know? We have some people in there, and if you guys want to send us any suggestions at all, definitely connect with us in there. We are in there a lot. Me and Michael are in there a lot, and so it's very likely that you'll even get to talk to us in person on there. And maybe even in voice at times too. You never know. But the link will be in the description of this, and you can join our Discord and interact with us and become part of the Evolution of Now's fan base. Proper
community.
There it is, the community. Yeah, I couldn't think of a better word. Sad. But we also have a Facebook, and I kind of just. All I do with the Facebook really is I send notifications out every week whenever the next episode comes out. If you want to like us on there and get the notifications through Facebook, it's facebook.com/theevolutionofnow. And the sources for the things that we've talked about will be in the description as well. If you feel like donating a little money to the show to help us out here, we desperately would love a little bit of love there, you know. if you want to do it, you know, you can. If you don't, that's fine. I don't want this show to ever be under a paywall or anything like so many other shows are, or podcasts or anything like that. But your donations really, really help us out a lot, guys. But you can do that at our Patreon page at patreon.com/theevolutionofnow. And with that, last words, Michael?
Vaccinate your kids.
Vaccinate. And
if you do want medical advice, go speak to your doctor. Don't get memes on Facebook.
Yeah. those memes not so good on medical advice. But with that, guys, I would like to say a little bit of an FU to Donald Trump, Paul
usual.
Ryan,
and hashtag fuck
Marco
the Tories.
Rubio, Mitch McConnell. Who else is out there? Rand Paul, FU.
Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson, FU. Theresa May, FU. Yeah. All those people, FU. And you guys have a great week. And we will see you here next week.